Stay out of this seat. You're nothing but the shame of this family, my mother and SIL snarled. At the $28,800 event I paid for. Then rot in your own filth, I said, while canceling deposits and freezing vendors. But what happened next? Exposed every secret they tried to hide, and now they're begging. Hey Reddit, long-time lurker, first-time poster here. This story happened about 8 months ago, and I'm finally ready to share the whole thing. It's pretty long, but trust me, the payoff is worth it. Grab some popcorn, because this gets absolutely wild. Let me start by giving you the full picture of my family dynamics, because it's important for understanding why what happened next was so satisfying. I'm Jake, 29 years old, and I work as a diesel mechanic at a regional trucking company. I make decent money, around $68,000 a year, but I get my hands dirty for a living. I drive a 10-year-old Ford pickup, live in a modest apartment, and I'm perfectly happy with my blue-collar lifestyle. I fix things, I solve problems, and I take pride in honest work. My older brother Tyler is 31 and works as a loan officer at a credit union downtown. He makes about $58,000, but acts like he's some Wall Street hotshot. Tyler has always been the golden child, the one who went to college, wears suits to work, and lives in a fancy downtown loft that costs more than my entire annual rent. Our parents absolutely worship the ground he walks on. Growing up, it was always, why can't you be more like Tyler? And Tyler's going places, while I was just the kid who preferred taking apart engines to studying literature. Don't get me wrong, Tyler and I got along fine, but there was definitely a hierarchy in our family, and I wasn't at the top. 2 years ago, Tyler started dating Melissa. This woman is the absolute definition of everything wrong with modern dating culture. She's 28, bleached blonde with obvious extensions, fake nails that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and the kind of person who takes selfies at every meal. She works part-time at some boutique clothing store in the trendy part of town, but carries herself like she's running a Fortune 500 company. From the very first family dinner where Tyler brought her home, Melissa made it crystal clear that she considered me beneath her social status. She would make these little passive-aggressive comments about my rough hands and ask when I was planning to upgrade my career. When I mentioned I was thinking about getting my ASE certification, she actually laughed and said, "That's cute, but when are you going to get a real job?" Tyler would just chuckle like she was being playful, never once defending me or telling her to back off. Our parents thought she was absolutely wonderful. Mom would constantly gush about how refined and sophisticated Melissa was, how she was elevating Tyler's social circle. Dad would make jokes about how Tyler had really outdone himself and better lock her down before she realizes she's too good for him. It made me physically sick to watch, but I kept my mouth shut because family loyalty meant something to me. I figured eventually they'd see through her act, or at least Tyler would get tired of her high-maintenance attitude. I should have trusted my instincts from day one. Melissa's social media presence was absolutely ridiculous. Her Instagram was public, and she posted literally everything. Expensive dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford on my salary, shopping trips to boutiques where a single shirt costs what I spend on clothes in 6 months, weekend getaways to wine country and beach resorts. She would caption everything with these insufferable hashtags like blessed and living my best life and deserve the best. The math never added up to me. Tyler's salary plus her part-time retail job should not have been funding this lifestyle, but whenever I mentioned it to my parents, they would just say Tyler was good with money and making smart investments. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was watching a master manipulator at work, and my entire family was falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. Last September, Tyler proposed to Melissa at some upscale restaurant that required reservations 3 weeks in advance. He spent $8,200 on an engagement ring that honestly looked pretty average to me, but what do I know about jewelry? Melissa's reaction was performed like she was auditioning for a reality show. Tears, screaming, immediately calling all her friends while still at the table. The proposal photos were all over her social media within hours, with captions about fairy tale moments, and when you know, and he finally put a ring on it. The comments from her friends were equally nauseating, all congratulating her on landing such a catch and talking about how lucky Tyler was. Within 48 hours of the engagement, Melissa was already planning what she called the engagement party of the century. Not a simple celebration with close family and friends, but a full-scale event that sounded more expensive than most people's actual weddings. She rented out this fancy event hall downtown that normally hosts corporate galas and charity fundraisers. The package included a full catering service, open bar, live jazz trio, professional photographer, custom floral arrangements, and even a chocolate fountain. The venue alone was $4,800 for one evening. When Mom showed me the planning documents Melissa had put together, my jaw dropped. This woman had created spreadsheets, mood boards, and vendor comparison charts like she was planning a diplomatic summit. The total budget came to $28,800 for a 4-hour party, for an engagement party. Mom sent out a family group text explaining that everyone needed to contribute equally to make this dream celebration happen. There were 9 family members chipping in: my parents, Tyler's godparents, my aunt and uncle, Tyler's 2 cousins, Tyler himself, and me. That worked out to exactly $3,200 per person. I had been saving up for almost a year to buy a used Harley-Davidson I'd found at a dealership across town. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was something I really wanted and had been working overtime to afford. The $3,200 was literally my entire motorcycle fund. But family comes first, right? That's what I was raised to believe. So I transferred the money without complaining. Even included a note saying, "Congrats to you both, can't wait to celebrate." What I didn't know at the time, and wouldn't find out until much later, was that Melissa had specifically insisted the cost be split equally, rather than proportionally based on income. So me making $68,000 was paying the same amount as my uncle, who works as an engineering consultant and makes $195,000 a year. When Tyler's godfather suggested maybe the contributions should be based on what people could afford, Melissa apparently threw a fit about how fairness means everyone pays the same, and we can't start our marriage by treating family differently. Tyler went along with it, of course. The engagement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in October. I took the day off work to drive into the city and get ready properly. I even went to a department store and bought a new dress shirt and tie specifically for the occasion, spending money I really couldn't afford, because I wanted to look respectable for Tyler's big day. The event hall was in the fancy part of downtown, surrounded by high-end restaurants and art galleries. When I pulled up in my pickup truck, I felt immediately out of place among all the luxury sedans and SUVs in the valet parking area. The building itself looked like something from a movie: marble columns, crystal chandeliers visible through massive windows, red carpet leading to the entrance. I walked in wearing my best dark jeans, the new dress shirt, a tie, and my only sport coat. It wasn't a full suit, but it was clean, pressed, and appropriate. Or so I thought. The moment I stepped through the doors, Melissa spotted me from across the room. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, surrounded by a group of her friends who were all dressed like they were attending a movie premiere. She looked me up and down with this expression of obvious disappointment, then said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Oh, Jake, I really thought you were going to dress up for this occasion." Then she actually giggled and turned to her friends like I was some kind of entertainment. One of them whispered something and they all laughed together while staring at me. I felt my face turn red, but I ignored it and went looking for my assigned seat. The tables were set up with these elaborate centerpieces and place cards written in gold calligraphy. I walked around the entire room looking for a card with my name on it. Nothing. I circled back and checked again, thinking maybe I'd missed it somehow. Still nothing. Finally, I approached one of the servers and asked if she could help me find my seat. She was very polite and checked her master list, running her finger down the names twice. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see your name on the seating chart anywhere. Are you certain you responded to the invitation?" Before I could answer, Melissa appeared again, this time with Tyler in tow. He looked uncomfortable but wasn't saying anything. "Oh, right, Jake," Melissa said with fake sympathy. "Yeah, the guest list got so long that we had to make some tough decisions about seating. We're just completely full up. But there's this great sports bar about 2 blocks down the street if you want to grab dinner and watch the game or something." She said this with a completely straight face, in front of strangers, after I had paid $3,200 to fund her dream party. Tyler looked like he wanted to say something, but just stood there silently. My parents were already seated at their table, clearly aware of what was happening, but apparently deciding not to cause a scene. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, processing what had just happened. This woman had taken my money, excluded me from the event I helped pay for, and was now dismissing me like I was some uninvited crasher. "Have a good evening," I said quietly, and walked out. The entire drive home, I kept replaying the moment in my head. The way she looked at me like I was something dirty on her shoe. The fake concern in her voice when she suggested I go find somewhere else to eat. The fact that my own family sat there and watched it happen without saying a word. By the time I got back to my apartment, humiliation had turned into something much colder and more focused. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Melissa's smug face and heard her condescending voice telling me to go find a sports bar. I kept thinking about my $3,200 and how I'd given up my motorcycle dream to help celebrate people who clearly didn't want me there. Around 3 in the morning, I got up and started looking through the financial information Tyler had sent me when I made the contribution. The account number he'd given me wasn't his usual checking account. It was a business account with both his and Melissa's names on it. That seemed odd, but I initially figured it was just some kind of joint account they'd set up for wedding expenses. Then I started thinking about all those expensive social media posts. The designer clothes, fancy restaurants, weekend trips to resort towns. I'm pretty good with numbers. You have to be in my line of work when you're calculating repair costs and parts pricing. Tyler makes about $58,000 at the credit union. Even if Melissa was working full-time at her boutique job instead of part-time, retail wages in our city max out around $35,000. So even with both incomes combined, they should have been bringing in maybe $93,000 before taxes. After taxes, rent on Tyler's downtown loft, car payments, insurance, groceries, and normal living expenses, there shouldn't have been much left over for the lifestyle Melissa was documenting online. I decided to do some digging. Started with public record searches online. You'd be amazed what information is available if you know where to look and have patience. Found out that Melissa had been married before, something she'd never mentioned to Tyler or anyone in our family. The marriage lasted only 18 months and ended in what looked like a pretty messy divorce. Dug deeper into the court records and found the divorce filing. Her ex-husband had cited financial infidelity and adultery as grounds for dissolution. According to the documents, Melissa had opened multiple credit accounts in her ex-husband's name without his knowledge and racked up over $34,000 in debt before he discovered what was happening. The guy had been forced to file bankruptcy to escape the debt she'd created. This was starting to look like a pattern. Next, I spent several hours going through Melissa's social media history more carefully. Started cross-referencing the dates and locations of her posts with Tyler's work schedule, which I knew pretty well since he often complained about his travel requirements. Tyler travels for the credit union fairly regularly. Conferences, training sessions, meetings with other branches. I remembered him mentioning specific dates when he'd be out of town, and I started checking what Melissa had been posting during those times. The timeline didn't add up at all. There were posts from expensive restaurants on nights when Tyler was definitely at conferences in other cities. Photos from shopping trips during work hours when she was supposedly at her boutique job. Pictures with groups of people I'd never seen before at events Tyler had never mentioned attending. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. I was scrolling through Melissa's Instagram posts from about 6 months ago when I noticed something in the background of one of her photos. She was showing off some new jewelry, probably a $400 bracelet knowing her taste. But behind her on the kitchen counter was a stack of mail that was partially visible. I zoomed in as much as possible and could make out partial return addresses. Credit card companies I'd never heard of. Something that looked like a collection agency. An envelope that clearly said, "Final Notice" in red letters. That's when I realized I needed help from someone with better computer skills than me. I have this buddy who works in IT support at a local company. He's one of those guys who knows way too much about internet research and data mining. I called him up and explained that I suspected my brother's fiancé was running some kind of scam, but I needed help finding proof. He was immediately interested. Apparently, he'd seen similar situations before and knew exactly what to look for. Within 2 hours, he'd found Melissa's name listed as a co-owner of some multi-level marketing nutrition company that had been shut down by the state attorney general's office for fraudulent business practices. The company had been taking money from investors while selling products that didn't meet FDA safety standards. According to the state records, Melissa personally owed $52,000 in unpaid business loans and legal settlements related to the failed company. But we were just getting started. My buddy found additional court records showing that Melissa had been involved in 2 other failed business ventures over the past 4 years. Each time, she'd convinced partners to invest money or co-sign loans, then disappeared when the businesses collapsed, leaving other people holding massive debt. The pattern was always the same. Convince someone to trust her with their financial information, use that access to create debt in their name, fund an unsustainable lifestyle for as long as possible, then move on to the next victim when everything fell apart. Tyler wasn't her boyfriend. He was her latest mark. But the most damning evidence came when my buddy started analyzing the metadata from her social media posts. Every photo uploads with hidden information about when and where it was taken. By comparing this data to Tyler's documented work schedule, we could prove that Melissa had been lying about her whereabouts consistently for months. She was posting romantic photos with Tyler, while simultaneously posting from completely different locations during his business trips. The timestamps showed she was living a double life. Then my buddy found her second Instagram account. This one was under a slightly different name and wasn't connected to Tyler or any of our family members. It was like looking into a completely different world. Photos with men I'd never seen before at expensive restaurants. Pictures from weekend trips that Tyler definitely hadn't been part of. Comments and interactions that made it clear she was in active relationships with multiple people. One photo in particular made me sick to my stomach. It was taken at the same restaurant where Tyler had proposed to her, just 3 weeks later. She was sitting at what looked like the exact same table, wearing the engagement ring Tyler had bought her, having dinner with some guy in an expensive suit. The caption read, "Nothing better than a man who knows how to treat a woman right." That's when I knew I had to tell Tyler everything. I called Tyler and asked if we could meet for coffee. Told him I had something serious to discuss, and it couldn't wait. He suggested this diner we used to go to as kids, someplace quiet where we could talk without interruption. I brought a folder with printed copies of everything my buddy and I had found. Court records, business filings, social media screenshots, timeline analysis, photos from her secret Instagram account. I'd organized it all chronologically, so Tyler could see the full scope of what we were dealing with. I started slowly, beginning with the failed businesses and debt records. Tyler's initial reaction was exactly what I expected: denial and defensiveness. "This has to be some kind of mistake," he kept saying. "Melissa told me she'd had some bad business partnerships in the past, but nothing like this. Tyler, look at the dates. Look at the amounts. This isn't ancient history. Some of these debts are still active." Then I showed him the divorce records and the pattern of financial abuse. His face started changing as he read through the documents. I could see him beginning to remember things. Comments Melissa had made about her ex-husband, explanations she'd given for her credit score, reasons why certain accounts had to be in Tyler's name. The timeline analysis was what really broke through his denial. When he saw proof that Melissa had been posting from other locations while telling him she was working or at home, something clicked. "I asked her about some of these posts," he said quietly. "She always had explanations. Said her phone's GPS was acting up, or she'd posted old photos by mistake." Finally, I showed him the pictures from her secret social media account. The photo from their proposal restaurant was the one that did it. Tyler just stared at it for a long time, then put his head in his hands. "How long have you known about this?" he asked. "I started looking into things after the engagement party." "Tyler, there's more. I think she's been using your credit information without telling you." That's when Tyler admitted something that made everything even worse. Over the past 6 months, he'd been getting notices about accounts he didn't remember opening. Credit card companies calling about payments. His credit score had dropped significantly for reasons he couldn't understand. Melissa had explanations for all of it, of course. Identity theft was common these days. Someone must have stolen his information. The credit reporting agencies made mistakes all the time. She'd convinced him to let her handle dealing with the credit issues since she had experience with this kind of thing from her previous business ventures. Tyler had literally handed over control of his financial life to someone who was systematically destroying it. We sat in that diner for 3 hours going through everything. Tyler called his bank and credit card companies right there from the table. What he discovered made both of us physically sick. There were 7 accounts in his name that he'd never opened. Credit cards, personal loans, even a store financing account for furniture he'd never bought. The total debt was over $89,000, all of it tied back to Melissa. But here's what made me absolutely furious. Remember that joint account where our family had sent the engagement party money? Melissa had been using those contributions to make minimum payments on the fraudulent accounts, while Tyler thought the money was sitting in their wedding fund. Our entire family had unknowingly funded her scam operation. Tyler was devastated, but also getting angry. Really angry. He wanted to confront Melissa immediately, but I convinced him we needed a better plan. "She's been playing this game a lot longer than you have," I told him. "If you just walk in there and accuse her, she'll have some explanation ready. We need to be smarter about this." That's when I suggested we turn the tables on her. Tyler was hesitant about any kind of elaborate revenge scheme at first. He's always been more of a take the high road kind of person, probably why he was such an easy target for someone like Melissa. But when I laid out exactly what she'd done, stolen from him, stolen from our entire family, humiliated me at an event I'd helped pay for, and destroyed his credit while lying to his face for months, he started coming around to the idea that she deserved more than just a quiet breakup. "She made me look like an idiot in front of everyone I care about," Tyler said. "My coworkers, my friends, our family. Everyone thinks I'm this successful guy who landed this amazing woman, but really I'm just another one of her victims." The plan we developed was simple, but devastating. Melissa had built her entire identity around appearing successful, sophisticated, and desirable. Her Instagram followers, her friend group, her job, her social status. Everything depended on maintaining this carefully crafted image. We were going to take that away from her piece by piece. Step 1. Tyler would act completely normal while secretly documenting everything. We needed her to admit to things in writing, recorded conversations where she talked about her schemes, undeniable proof that could be used legally if necessary. Step 2. I would reach out to her ex-husband and the other people who'd been involved in her failed business ventures. If she'd done this before, they might have information that could help protect other potential victims. Step 3. We'd expose everything at once to our family, her employer, her social circle, and potentially law enforcement if we found evidence of actual fraud. Tyler was motivated now. He'd realized that every "I love you" had been part of a performance. Every intimate moment had been her manipulating him for financial gain. She hadn't just stolen his money, she'd stolen 8 months of his life and made him complicit in deceiving everyone he cared about. We spent the next 3 weeks gathering evidence. Tyler started asking pointed questions and recording the conversations on his phone. Got her to admit that she'd been seeing other people, but it didn't mean anything serious. Recorded her talking about how easy it was to get access to credit accounts when you were in a relationship with someone who trusted you. The most damning evidence came when Tyler pretended to be interested in her business opportunities. Melissa laid out her entire system: identify men with stable incomes and good credit, move the relationship forward quickly to gain financial access, maximize available credit while maintaining the appearance of success, then exit before everything collapsed. She'd done this to at least 4 other men before Tyler. My conversation with her ex-husband was eye-opening. The guy was actually grateful that someone was finally holding her accountable. He'd tried to warn people before, but nobody believed him because Melissa was so good at playing the victim. He provided documentation of everything she'd done to him, including police reports and court filings that painted a clear picture of her methods. He also connected me with 2 other men who'd had similar experiences with her. We were building a case that would be impossible for her to explain away. The engagement party had been on a Saturday night in October. We waited until the first Friday in November to execute our plan. Tyler had arranged what he told Melissa was a special dinner to celebrate their 1-month engagement anniversary. He'd made reservations at the same upscale restaurant where he'd proposed, telling her he wanted to recreate that magical evening. Melissa spent the entire day getting ready, posted about it on both her Instagram accounts, talking about how blessed she was to have such a thoughtful and romantic fiancé. She even invited some of her friends to coincidentally show up at the restaurant later so they could witness her perfect relationship. Instead of Tyler, I showed up. I'd borrowed a suit from my buddy and arrived right on time for their reservation. Melissa was already seated at their table, looking absolutely stunning and completely confused when she saw me approaching instead of Tyler. "Jake, what are you doing here? Where's Tyler?" "Tyler's at the police station filing fraud reports," I said calmly, taking the seat across from her. "But he wanted me to give you something before he presses charges." I placed a manila envelope on the table between us. Inside were printed copies of everything we'd discovered over the past month: court records, credit reports, photos from her secret social media accounts, screenshots of her recorded admissions, and statements from her previous victims. But the centerpiece was a detailed timeline showing exactly how she'd been manipulating Tyler, along with bank records proving she'd used our family's engagement party contributions to fund her debt payments. "You have exactly 48 hours to pack your belongings and disappear from Tyler's life completely," I told her. "If you're not gone by Sunday evening, he's pressing criminal charges for identity theft, fraud, and embezzlement." Melissa's face went through about 5 different emotions as she flipped through the pages. Confusion, then recognition, then panic, then anger, and finally something that looked like respect mixed with fear. The people at nearby tables were starting to notice that something dramatic was happening. Melissa's carefully applied makeup was beginning to run as the reality of her situation sank in. "You can't prove any of this," she said, but her voice was shaking. "Actually, we can prove all of it. Tyler recorded you admitting to most of these things. Plus, your ex-husband and 3 other men have agreed to testify about your previous scams if this goes to court." That's when something beautiful happened. The confident, manipulative woman who had humiliated me just a month earlier completely crumbled. "Jake, please. I know I made some mistakes, but I really do love Tyler. I can change. I'll get help. I'll pay back every penny." "With what money?" "You're nearly $100,000 in debt across multiple people. I'll figure it out. I'll get a real job. I'll do whatever it takes. Please don't destroy my life over this. Should have thought about that before you treated me like garbage and stole from my entire family. People were definitely staring now. The sophisticated image she'd worked so hard to maintain was dissolving right there in front of everyone. Her voice was getting louder and more desperate. Please, I'm sorry about the engagement party. I was stressed about planning everything and I took it out on you. But please don't ruin my relationship over one bad night. One bad night? You've been cheating on my brother for months while destroying his credit. You stole money from 9 family members. You tried to humiliate me because I work with my hands instead of sitting in an office. I'll apologize to everyone. I'll make it right. I'll do anything you want. It's too late for that, Melissa. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my arm. What do you want from me? Money? I'll find a way to pay you back first. An apology? I'll get on my knees right here in front of everyone. Just tell me what will make this go away. I looked down at her and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just complete indifference. I want you to disappear and never contact anyone in my family again. That's it. I left her sitting there crying while the entire restaurant watched. It was the first time in months that I felt genuinely good about something. By Sunday evening, Tyler's apartment was empty, except for the massive debt she'd left behind. She'd moved back to her parents' house in another state, but the damage to her reputation was just beginning. Tyler forwarded me the messages she'd been sending, dozens of texts begging for another chance, promising to get therapy, threatening to hurt herself if he didn't take her back, claiming she was pregnant. She wasn't. Even saying she'd accuse him of domestic violence if he didn't drop the fraud charges. Her employer found out about the criminal investigation and fired her immediately. Her Instagram accounts went private after people started commenting about the stolen money and fake lifestyle. Her entire friend group dropped her once they realized they'd been unknowingly participating in documenting her scams. The best part was watching her social media presence completely disappear. All those photos of expensive dinners and designer clothes, all those captions about being blessed and living her best life, gone overnight. 3 other men reached out to Tyler after word spread about what we'd discovered. She'd been running variations of the same scam on multiple people simultaneously, using each relationship to fund the others. They're all considering a coordinated legal response. Tyler's doing much better now. His credit is damaged and he's dealing with the debt, but at least he found out before they actually got married. He's been seeing a therapist to process how thoroughly he was manipulated, and honestly seems happier than he's been in years. As for me, Tyler insisted on paying me back the $3,200 engagement party contribution, plus the money I'd spent on investigating Melissa. He said it was the least he could do since I'm the one who saved him from making the biggest mistake of his life. I finally bought that motorcycle I'd been saving for. Every time I ride it, I think about how close I came to never getting it, because I was funding some con artist's fake lifestyle. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's protecting the people you care about and watching a manipulative person face the consequences of their own actions. Last week, Melissa called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. She was crying, begging me to fix things with Tyler. Apparently, she can't find anyone else willing to fund her lifestyle. Her parents have cut her off after learning about the debt, and she's facing potential criminal charges in 2 different states. I know you hate me, she said through tears, but Tyler won't even talk to me. You're the only one who can make him understand that I've changed. I listened to her plead for about 30 seconds, then said the same thing she'd told me at that engagement party. There's a great sports bar about 2 blocks down the street if you want to grab dinner or something. Then I hung up and blocked her number permanently. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.